Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, replaying a conversation with someone who pushed your buttons and left you feeling rattled and unsettled? Maybe it's a family member who always has an opinion, a difficult colleague, a neighbor, an ex partner, your teenage children, or someone who seems to leave you feeling emotionally exhausted every time you interact with them. As we move into midlife, there is often a lot of shifting going on in our relationships and within ourselves. We tend to have less patience for unnecessary drama. We're juggling more responsibilities, and we're becoming increasingly aware of how precious our energy really is. So, today I'd like to share 5 practical strategies that have helped me think differently about difficult people. Strategies that can help you protect your peace, strengthen your boundaries, and respond with confidence instead of reacting from stress. Kia ora and hello. Welcome to the Living Midlife Well podcast. I'm Janine Lattimore, a wellbeing writer and coach, here to help people in midlife get off the treadmill of stress and exhaustion, rediscover their joy, and create a life that is aligned with who they really are and what they really want. Today, we're talking about something that every one of us encounters at some point: difficult people. Are you dealing with a difficult person in your life? It may be a coworker who is always getting in your face, a mother-in-law who loves to give you her advice, a rude neighbor, an unreasonable boss, or even a grumpy or defiant child or teenager. Midlife often brings greater self-awareness, but this time of transition can also bring more challenging relationships through things like changing family structures, marital separation, children becoming adults, and hormonal shifts reducing tolerance levels. Dealing with difficult people in midlife can lead to feelings of anxiety, stress, anger, frustration, and of being trapped in a situation you do not want to be in. It can also be a big drain on your energy. Learning how to deal with difficult people isn't about changing their behavior. It's about strengthening your own emotional resilience, setting healthy boundaries, and responding with confidence instead of reacting from stress or frustration. In today's episode, I'll share 5 practical strategies to help you manage difficult people in midlife, protect your energy, communicate more effectively, and create healthier, more peaceful relationships while continuing your own journey of personal growth. But before we jump into those 5 strategies, I think it's important to lay a foundation. There are 2 mindset shifts that make every other strategy much more effective. The first is this: focus on what you can control. You can only control your own thoughts, feelings, and behavior, and you are responsible for your own thoughts, feelings, and behavior. The second is this: remember that everyone can be difficult sometimes. Yes, even really nice people. Let's look at each of those a little more closely. As soon as you start trying to control other people's behavior, then you're in trouble. It can be done through manipulation or force, but that is not really ethical, usually not overly effective, and it takes a lot of energy on your part to maintain the control. Most people don't like being controlled or told what to do and will rebel against it in some way, or only do what they're told when someone else is putting pressure on them. Even asking yourself a question like, why are they doing this to me, is putting your focus and energy on something you cannot answer or control. I love this quote from Pastor Daniel Fusco: control the knobs on your side of the wall. It's such a great visual illustration of this concept. You may think that it is the other person who is the problem and it is them that needs to change, but you may be surprised at how much effect it can have when you focus on your own thoughts, feelings, and behavior, the things you can actually control. Now, here's something else that I think is really important. As we reflect on our own behavior, we can also note that sometimes we can be difficult to deal with too, usually without meaning to be. Ask any happily married couple, and they'll probably be able to name at least one habit or personality trait of their beloved that annoys or frustrates them. Our difficult traits don't necessarily make us difficult people, and often what triggers you about someone else is more to do with your own likes, dislikes, and wiring than it is about them. In the same way, someone exhibiting difficult behavior may not be directing it personally at you. They could simply be stressed, frustrated, tired, or feeling unwell. We all get grumpy and snap at people sometimes. Be open to trying to see why they may be behaving this way. And if they are going through something demanding, try to extend compassion while maintaining boundaries that protect you mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's important to remember that someone's why is a reason, not an excuse. You can understand why someone behaves the way they do without deciding that their behavior is acceptable. The purpose of understanding isn't to excuse them, it is to help you manage your own response rather than being drawn into an emotional reaction. Look at the other person through a lens of compassion and approach the situation as a puzzle to be solved rather than a threat to defend yourself against. Remember that everyone is doing the best they can from where they are, and that not everything is about you. Ask yourself, what are they really trying to gain? What are they trying to avoid? If you feel able to, perhaps even ask them what's going on for them and what they're hoping for. Curiosity can open doors that judgment never could. There's one more piece of groundwork before we get into the practical strategies. Reflecting on our own behavior also means being honest and fair about the role we are playing in our interactions. Are you being difficult in some way? Are you asking more of the other person than they're capable of giving? Have you clearly communicated your expectations? Are you tired or stressed? Are you escalating things without realizing it? Are you taking responsibility for things that aren't actually yours? These aren't comfortable questions, but they are powerful ones because meaningful and lasting change begins when we become willing to look at our own side of the relationship. So, with these two mindset shifts in place, focusing on what you can control and approaching people with curiosity and compassion, let's move into the 5 practical strategies. The first one is about understanding your own emotional triggers. This one can feel a little uncomfortable at first, but I genuinely believe it's one of the most empowering. I'd like to begin with a quote from Abraham Hicks that really captures this idea. The negative emotion you feel is not about what they're doing. It's about your perspective of what they are doing. Whether or not you agree completely with that statement, I think there's something valuable in it because it invites us to become curious about our own reactions. What we see or perceive in others is often a projection of our own beliefs, judgments, values, and experiences. In neurolinguistic programming, or NLP, this is referred to as perception is projection. If you find that someone else's behavior pushes your buttons and stimulates a strong emotional response in you, then it may be that their behavior represents a characteristic you possess but wish you didn't, or something you fear, or something you don't allow yourself to be or have. Now, I want to pause here because this isn't about blaming yourself, quite the opposite. This is not a judgment of you, it's a gift. It's information that can help you become free. When you are in a place of blame and seeing things outside of you as the source of your negative experience, then you are largely powerless because it is very difficult to change other people and all the circumstances of your life. When you accept that how you feel is the result of how you are thinking about a certain person or condition, in other words, your perspective, then you empower yourself because you have full control over what you choose to think and the meaning you choose to give something. That's where change becomes possible. Here are 4 reflection questions that may help you to clarify any triggers that are operating subconsciously for you with regards to someone you find challenging. What emotion is being triggered in me? In what ways does this person represent something I'm afraid of? In what ways does this person represent something I want? And perhaps the deepest question of all, what does my response to this person show me about parts of myself that are asking to be accepted and loved? Ask these questions with curiosity rather than judgment, then allow space for the answers to come. Insight doesn't always arrive immediately. Sometimes it comes during meditation, sometimes while you're out walking. Sometimes it comes through a conversation, a book, or even a completely unrelated experience that suddenly makes everything click and gives you that aha moment. Trust the process. Sometimes the answers arrive quietly when we're no longer forcing them. Now let's move to the second strategy. This one is surprisingly simple but incredibly powerful. When someone is difficult to be around, our brain naturally starts collecting evidence about everything that's wrong with them. But what if we deliberately changed where we placed our attention? This is where strategy number 2 comes in. Look for the positive instead of the problem. This strategy involves actively looking for positive aspects about the difficult person that you can begin to appreciate. Now, I completely understand that this may sound challenging, especially if the person has been causing you genuine stress. It may even sound like one of those just be nice pieces of advice, but that's not what this is. This isn't about pretending everything is okay. It's about reclaiming your focus. Whatever you consistently focus on becomes dominant in your mind. Your reticular activating system, which is the filtering system in your brain, starts finding more evidence of whatever you're looking for. As Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows. If you've spent months or even years focusing on everything you dislike about a certain person, that's going to have momentum. Changing that focus takes practice. Perhaps you can begin by recognizing one quality you appreciate, or making a small list of things you don't mind about them. It doesn't have to be traumatic. As you begin looking for positive aspects, you'll naturally start noticing more of them. There's another interesting thing that often begins to happen as well. When we focus on someone's positive qualities, we often draw more of those qualities out of them. This is similar to the parenting and teaching concept of praising positive behavior in children to encourage more of it. There's also fascinating science that helps explain why this works. Our brain, and even more so our heart, creates an electromagnetic field which is influenced by our thoughts and emotions. The emotional tone we carry can influence the emotional tone of people around us. It's a little like tuning forks. Tuning forks have a set natural frequency, and when you set one ringing, then sound waves from the struck fork transfer physical energy through the air, vibrating any nearby forks that have the same frequency and pitch. This is called sympathetic resonance, and it works in humans as well. In people, this happens through 3 main mechanisms. Mirror neurons help us unconsciously mirror emotions. Physiological entrainment allows breathing patterns, heart rhythms, and even brain waves to synchronize between people. And emotional contagion is the subconscious spread of moods between people. Have you ever noticed yourself smiling because someone else smiled, or yawning because someone else yawned? That's emotional contagion in action. The beautiful part of all this is that although we can't directly control another person's emotions, we can choose the emotional tone we bring into a conversation, and sometimes that alone changes the interaction. The third strategy I'm going to give you builds on this concept of reclaiming your focus, but goes a step further in terms of not giving the other person so much space inside your own mind. Even thinking about positive aspects of the other person is still thinking about them. And sometimes trying to find positives in the difficult person feels like too much to ask. And that's okay. Instead, simply redirect your attention somewhere healthier. Focus on what you're grateful for. Spend time with people who uplift you. Do more of what brings you joy. Watch something funny. Listen to music that lifts your mood. Spend time in nature. Create things to look forward to. As much as you can, gently move your attention away from the difficult person and towards experiences that create peace, appreciation, optimism, and freedom. Again, where focus goes, energy flows. The less emotional energy you feed into a difficult person, the less influence they have over your well being. The fourth strategy is one that is immediately practical. It's about changing the way we communicate. One of the most powerful relationship skills you can develop is learning to ask effective questions. Asking questions that require the difficult person to think about what they are saying or doing can have two effects. It makes you less of a neutral, agreeable target, and it can prompt people to come up with their own solutions and solve their own problems without drawing you into their drama. The questions I'm giving you for this strategy work best when they're asked with genuine curiosity, not sarcasm, not frustration, just calm curiosity. Sometimes that alone changes the energy of the conversation. The other person may simply move on because you're no longer giving them the emotional reaction they expected, or because it requires too much effort on their part to answer your questions. Or they may begin thinking differently and find their own solution. One approach I particularly like is often called the grey rock approach. It's calm, neutral, steady. Difficult people often feed off emotional reactions. When you stay emotionally grounded, there's much less for them to latch onto. Here's a list of 10 questions that you can use to redirect difficult conversations. Rather than trying to memorize the full list of these, think of them as tools in a toolkit and use the ones that fit with the situation you are experiencing. You also don't have to try and write these down. The list is in the transcript for this episode and also in the written article connected to this podcast, which I will link in the show notes. Here's the questions. What would a positive outcome look like to you? What could be one thing you could do to improve this? What's important to you about this? What other options have you explored? Who else could help with this? Or if someone says something hurtful, I'm curious, what do you mean by that? The purpose of these questions isn't to fix people, it's to gently hand their emotional energy back to them. Instead of carrying their problem yourself, you invite them to think about it. I also give step-by-step instructions to another tool called the Mirror and Affirm process in my guide, Stop Absorbing Other People's Problems. I will put the link to that in the show notes as well if you want to check it out. Mirroring, especially using a lower, slower tone of voice, can be incredibly effective for calming emotionally heightened situations. I actually used this regularly when I worked in student support at a local high school. And it was remarkable how simply slowing my own energy helped the other person settle as well. In the final part of this episode, we'll look at one of the hardest but sometimes most necessary strategies, setting healthy boundaries. We'll also talk about how to know when it's time to walk away, what to do if you feel trapped, and I'll leave you with one practical action you can take this week in my Just One Thing segment. So far, we've talked about understanding our triggers, choosing where we place our focus, protecting our energy, and using thoughtful questions to redirect difficult conversations. Our final strategy is probably the most challenging of them all. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we need to make some difficult decisions about how much access someone has to us. One of the greatest gifts of midlife is that we begin to realize our time and energy are precious. We simply don't have the capacity or the desire to carry everyone else's emotional load. That makes boundaries incredibly important. You can remove yourself from a situation in two ways: by creating personal boundaries or by physically removing yourself from a space. Creating a personal boundary is a way of protecting your energy within an environment. Keep the focus on your well being rather than setting boundaries to punish another person. Ask yourself, what do I need to keep myself safe and functioning well within this situation? That might mean taking control of the communication channel and arranging for conversations to happen by email rather than face to face. It could mean changing your schedule so you're spending less time around someone. Or it may mean having the courage to honestly communicate what you need and what you would like to change. Most interpersonal conflict comes back to communication. Either things haven't been communicated at all, or they've been misunderstood. Learning how to communicate well is a huge topic in itself, and it's one I'll explore more in future episodes. While clear communication and boundaries are good, sometimes they aren't enough. If you think someone is genuinely toxic, or you find that it's too hard to start thinking nice thoughts about someone who's right there in your space stressing you out, then removing yourself from the situation may be the healthiest choice. That is a valid option. However, unless there is a safety issue, I would usually see it as a final option. And the reason I say that is this: leaving a situation doesn't automatically create inner peace, because wherever you go, there you are. You take your thoughts, beliefs, and emotional patterns with you. Human interactions always have two sides. If we continually avoid every difficult relationship, we may find ourselves encountering similar people again and again because the same patterns inside us continue to be activated. Conflict, difficult as it is, can become an opportunity to heal triggers, to strengthen communication skills, to build healthier boundaries, and to become the authentic and confident person you want to be. There is one more situation I want to discuss and one more tool I want to give you. Sometimes you know you want to leave a situation, but you feel trapped. Maybe it's because of finances, or family, or work, or circumstances that simply can't change overnight. If that's you, I'd like to leave you with one more mindset tool. Instead of trying to solve the entire problem immediately, try gently softening your thinking. One simple way to do that is through what I call what if questions. These aren't questions you're trying to answer. They're questions that gently open your mind to possibilities. For example, you could ask, what if I could leave? Or what if I could leave sometime in the future? Or what if this situation turned out to be temporary? Sometimes creating even a tiny opening in your thinking creates space for hope, and hope often comes before change. As we come to the end of this episode, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. All five of these strategies are valid ways of responding to difficult people. Which ones you use will depend on where you are at emotionally, how stressed you feel, how empowered you feel, and ultimately what kind of life you want to create. But always remember, wherever you go, there you are. If you simply move from one difficult relationship to another without changing what's happening inside you, you'll often find the same patterns repeating in different forms. Real and lasting change begins within. You can't control other people's personalities, choices, or behavior, but you can choose how you respond. And that is where your greatest power lies. Midlife gives us an opportunity to stop giving away our energy trying to fix, change, or please everyone else. Instead, we can become more intentional in our responses. We now have decades of life experience behind us. We have wisdom, greater self awareness, emotional maturity. Instead of seeing every difficult interaction as something to survive, we can begin seeing it as an invitation to strengthen our boundaries, improve our communication, deepen our compassion, and build greater trust in ourselves. As you focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your emotions, your boundaries, and your actions, you'll probably notice something interesting. Difficult people begin to have less power over your life. Some relationships will improve, some will naturally fall away, others won't change at all, but you will. And that changes everything. Personal growth in midlife isn't about creating a life without difficult people. It's about becoming the kind of person who can remain grounded, compassionate, and confident, even when life brings challenging relationships. The more you strengthen your inner world, the more peace, freedom, and fulfillment you'll create in your outer one. Before we finish, it's time for my just one thing takeaway. If there's only one action you take from today's episode, let it be this. Choose one or two of the questions we talked about for redirecting difficult conversations. Write them in the Notes app on your phone. And don't wait until you're in the middle of a difficult conversation to try remembering and using them. Start using them this week in everyday conversations that feel comfortable and low pressure. The more familiar they become, the easier they'll be to use when emotions are running high. Sometimes the smallest changes create the biggest transformations. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I know relationships can be some of the most rewarding and sometimes the most challenging parts of life. My hope is that today's conversation has given you not only practical tools, but also a fresh perspective, one that helps you protect your peace while continuing to grow into the person you want to become. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love it if you shared it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you have any questions or there's a topic you'd like me to explore in a future episode, please leave a comment or send me a message. I genuinely love to hear from you. If you found this interesting or helpful, then please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment or review. This supports me and also helps other people find this information and benefit from it. Until next time, keep living midlife well. Aroha nui, much love. I'm Janine, and I look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode. Bye for now.